personally, this is rather pessimistic. I don't see my organization on the undergraduate level making it to our bicentennial year. You know what I'm saying? We're the first Black Greek organization, the oldest. I don't see us. We've already made it to the 100-year and then some. I don't see us making it past that 200-year mark in the way things are going now.
In 1946. That's when most people here weren't even born. And I had a wonderful time. The only thing that I regret about Kappa, he's a little too strong, and I knew what happened up with FAMU's band. I knew that was going to happen with Kappas or Omegas or one of those organizations. It happened with the Omegas, FAMU band. The whole concept of Greekdom among blacks is rich and rewarding. If we participate, it'll be more richly rewarding to the individuals concerned. Another thing too, I found that among black people, that Greeks usually achieve more in breaking through the ceiling that the country has provided. They achieve more, but not only because they're educated, because they're more motivated. And motivation comes through the fact that they realize that they're at a disadvantage, a new type of slavery. But they said, even in the darkest days, some of us broke through, and we're going to continue to break through. But I'm hoping that Greekdom, if we can't get Kappa going, the Pan-Hellenic Council, with all the fraternities, sororities, can get together and meet once or twice a month and develop programs for the enhancement of our people, because we're still not free yet. Thank you.
The purpose of the organizations is still outstanding, serving their communities, providing scholarships and other ways of helping young people become fine men and women. I do think sometimes a few people have gone to the extreme as they go through the pledging process, but I think that's correctable. But don't stop and change the whole process of becoming members of a Greek organization.
Continue to be necessary for the good that they do. Certainly when it comes down to thinking in terms of hazing and going to some extremes, that has been done. However, initiation will take place, and it must take place, but there'll be no way that Greek organizations will be outlawed or removed. When you look at some mistakes made on one hand and the good that is made on the other hand, the relationships, the camaraderie that follow you throughout life, and all of the good that they do, then certainly we have to be in favor of Greek organizations remaining.
Kind of have to evolve a little bit. They have to move and rethink their mission, their function, and to a great extent, I would suggest that they're capable of doing that, and it would be better for them to remain as a viable part of the community than for them to disappear.
Being away from home and needing that type of family environment, these fraternity was something I wanted to become a part of, but I was hazed in the pledging and the initiation all the way through. Chapters from other colleges came by and hazed us as well. I didn't like the hazing part. At one point I started to quit, but I do believe, I know for sure that fraternities serve a very important role on college campuses within the community as well. But the hazing is something that's a cultural part of Greek life that will take a lot of time to change. I even advised my son, who wanted to become a Kappa, to pledge grad chapter because there was less hazing in the graduate chapter, and the grad chapter seemed to hold more to what the fraternity was actually about. So I hope fraternities will always be on campuses. That's an important part of campus life, but somebody's going to have a lot of conversation about how to improve conditions for pledging, specifically hazing.
I pledged grad chapter. I've been a member since 2008. I attended the University of Florida and did attend a rush during my freshman year, and decided not to pursue that interest at the time because of hazing. Prior to even going to a rush, if they thought that you were interested in the sorority, you went through several questioning, intimidation sessions. So at that time I didn't feel that it was proper for me, because I was one that didn't tolerate much of authority and leadership and bullying, so I decided not to. But I do believe that if we can close the gap between the graduate and the undergraduate chapters, educate them a little bit more about what sororities and fraternities purposes are, that would ideally, eliminate a lot of the hazing. I think that the undergrads have a misconception of sororities and fraternities.
I think that the organization should remain on the campus due to that. We do understand that there are some illegal activity that go on with some other organizations, such as hazing, but that can be taken care of. Just speaking from my own experience on the campus of North Carolina Central University, we actually had Greek advisors. Every organization in the Panhandle Council had a Greek advisors, and those Greek advisors were assigned by their respective organization graduate chapter. And that does help for us graduates overseeing the undergraduates, because that's where most of those type of activities take place. So just to raise the awareness to the people that are interested in their respective organizations, they should research the history of the organization and know why they're joining and what motivates them to want to join that organization, and not just to be, I guess, popular or to go in and participate in activities to prove themselves, but in order to serve a purpose, and that's for them to represent the organization and what the organization stands for.
Greek life, you should do your research. You should find your personality and your belief system, and then find an organization within the Panhandle Council that you believe in. A lot of the times that we've gotten away from now is because we're having friends. We're having friends join our organizations who not necessarily uphold the standards of our organization. We've also looking at the Hollywoodization of our organizations per se. That is not the premise of what we do. That's a part of it, but it's not all of it. Working together in the community, uplift our community once we bind ourselves together as undergrads, and as we go out into our communities as graduates, we should be able to uphold the standards of African Americans to raise our individual communities.
I went through what would be called a traditional pledging period, but there was no hazing involved in my pledge period. I think it's unfortunate that some of the chapters have felt that hazing was a necessary part of the process. I never believed that was the case or should be the case. I hope that the more positive aspects of membership in Greek organizations, which include for me lifelong friendships, the opportunity to meet people across the nation and indeed around the world who are part of my organization. We had a strong Christian element to our organization. We have, I should say, a strong Christian element to our organization. And I think that as Christians, we have to treat each person as we want to be treated. There is no place for hazing or any type of abuse in Greek life. I feel fortunate to have become a Delta when I did, because it has made me a better person and has enriched my life.
I have been hazed, and I have hazed, not as an Omega. When I was studying my undergraduate studies at the Florida A&M University, I was a proud member, and to this day, a proud member of Florida A&M Marching 100. Now, I'm an alumni member, and I'm still a proud member, even though the circumstances is
became of the organization. Me personally, I believe in some hazing to a form, but not the physical form. When I say to a form, to get a nickname, to maybe do an act, or somewhat just an embarrassing scene on college campus, yes, but to just physically beat someone down to cause them bodily harm, I'm not with that at all. I cannot understand it, and believe it or not, these people that I still communicate with today, a lot of them Omegas, majority of them are Marching 100 members, and I know this is about fraternity life, but it all plays in together because it's a brotherhood and a sisterhood. It's just not a formal organization as far as Omegas or Deltas or whoever, but it is a brotherhood, and we as members cannot understand the concept of what took place of hazing and taking it to that level. For example, we would never, back when I was participating in the band, hit anyone in their face or in their knees to intentionally hurt them, because we needed every man to be able to play and every man or lady to be able to march. And then we had accountability among ourselves. Hey, if we felt somebody was out of line with hazing, which we were always out of line, don't get me wrong now, we were wrong, but we felt somebody just was over the edge or out of line, we as upperclassmen stepped to them ourselves like, you were wrong. Overall, hazing does not play a part, but I think with the system we need to take time out to get to know an individual. Not because he's my friend or my blood brother or whatever. Speaking of the fact, my blood brother is not worthy of being Omega. I got friends who are not worthy to be an Omega, but I do not try to bring them in there because they are my friend, because, hey, I know they are not what Omega is all about.
Anyone who desires to go into a sorority should be able to go in, or a fraternity should be able to go in with dignity, because we as a people have been put down and degraded enough, and we don't need that. We need to build character and build young women and men. So for that reason, I am totally against hazing, and I'm sorry that it has gotten so far as to become detrimental to the young people that are already in there. Cut.
Hello, my name is Fred Washington, and I pledged Kappa Alpha Psi in 1979. 79 was a very significant year because that was the last year that you could officially, above ground, engage in a process known as hazing. That was the final year. So our line was the host of several other generations of Kappas in Ypsilanti, Michigan, that came to our various, as we called them, sessions. And they came there to grill us on the material, and if we didn't know the material, the process of hazing would be engaged. That could be either psychological, physical, different forms of hazing. Now, although I do feel that hazing has gotten way out of hand, I do think that it does serve a practical purpose, because it teaches what they used to call deference. And deference is the willful submission to the wills and wishes of others. Sometimes people have to break down as an individual to grow as a unit. So I do believe in some form of uniformed, structured, non-violent hazing. I believe in boot camp in the military. It's the exact same process. It happens all the time. They break people down. They have that fear factor. People have to walk in a line in the military. People have to eat together. People have to go to bed at the exact same time. So I do believe that it happens in all different types of institutions, not just in fraternities and sororities. But I do think that people have gotten way out of hand with it. So I think that under the supervision, a limited amount, just to bring about unity without physical harm, I think is necessary. So I appreciate this opportunity to speak on this very sensitive and timely subject. Thank you very much.
When I was on your
it was more like bragging rights. However, when I was here, we didn't sit down and just talk about what happened or what we went through. So I can't attest to anyone else saying this is what they do. I personally believe that a lot of times people like to talk a lot about things that happen, not necessarily it's what actually happened, or people might just want to leave it to an interpretation. And the biggest thing I think that happens is maybe it's Greeks, maybe it's non-Greeks, but a lot of times it's of, well, my such and such is a such and they said such and such, so let's keep talking about this is what's happening. When technically that might not be what's happening now, especially with hazing being such a hot issue and it's actually punishable by being incarcerated. I can't see my fellow Greeks actually going so far to that point and getting themselves put in jail. We're here at the university to graduate, not to go straight to jail. So what I personally believe is that now I can honestly say people have woken up a little bit. They have seen the seriousness behind it. And I believe that the stigma about it is probably going to start changing just because of the severity of the situation. Would an above ground process eliminate outside suspicions? Probably not, because the history of it is already instilled. It's been like that for years upon years upon years. I mean, if you spoke with older Greeks versus newer Greeks, it's still that mindset. If you speak with non-Greeks about what you think Greeks do, they probably have this plethora of information to tell you about what Greeks do. And some of it may be true, some of it might not be true, and some of it might just sound new to you, like, oh, really? So I don't think it'll stop it. I think it will basically, for Greeks in general, keep them a little bit more safe.
I feel that as time goes on and chapters are getting taken off yard because of hazing allegations, I feel that initially there would be a decrease in membership on these various undergraduate campuses. But at the same time, I feel that when they do come back and, you know, if it does proceed, that it'll just be a club that they did one time. Like it'll just it'll be like the white fraternities and sororities, where they might, you know, cross this semester and join the organization. The next semester just be like, oh, you know, that was it. It was just something I did.
Is there like a stigma between individuals who have had a less strenuous process? And I can definitely say that that may be true, especially nowadays, because people, they use the term loosely, or not even loosely, they just use the term made versus paper. And usually that correlates to how long your process was. And I definitely can see that like individuals who have maybe had shorter processes might be looked upon differently than people who have had longer processes.
One thing that I can't agree with is that undergrad chapters will not exist within the next 10 to 20 years because of all the hazing allegations that Nationals has to go through. Over the past few years, there have been many organizations that have been suspended from their yard because of hazing. That comes with lawsuits and people go to jail and messing up their futures. With grad chapters, there supposedly is no hazing, and each organization is a non-hazing organization. As an undergrad chapter, college students feel that they can get away with the law, and everything does come to light.
Having an above-ground pledge process would definitely aid in the Greek image, because I feel like people will see certain things and they will understand why we do certain things. In a sense, I feel like we're losing our tradition, because a lot of the times people that are making the decisions on what we should be removing from our process or our new member presentation shows don't understand what they mean. For example, we are no longer allowed to lock up, and it's because it is a form of hazing. However, what people don't understand is locking up is not a form of hazing. It is meant to emphasize the symbolism behind the actual action of locking up. So locking up came from early African American history, where people would be traveling through the Underground Railroads and they would oftentimes lock up or when they were selling slaves, they would walk up with their brothers and sisters to prevent them from being separated, because oftentimes brothers and sisters, family members, cousins, aunts and uncles would be separated when they were being sold in the slave trade. So that's the symbolism behind locking up. It has nothing to do with providing discomfort to someone. It's supposed to emphasize the symbolism of having a brother or sister. So I think that having pledging going underground, you have a lot of misconceptions about why Greeks do certain things, and I think that with other chapters, it tends to allow this breeding ground for pledging practices that aren't necessarily necessary or make sense. So if things were all above ground, I think we would stay true to our traditions and we wouldn't get out of hand with how certain things are done. So I believe that when it comes to having that transparency, it would help in many ways, and it would also inform the community so that they better understand and have the right admiration for these Greek-lettered organizations.
Regardless of how strong or how intense your process is, if you haven't learned anything from it, then that determines whether or not you will be a good member, contributing member to your organization and to the National Panhellenic Council. So you could have been hit the most with the most paddles, you could have, ran the most miles, but if you learned nothing from your process and you did not learn about the history of Black Greek-lettered organizations, period, about your own fraternity or sorority, about the MPHC and what it means to be a Black Greek or a Greek in general, then your intake process is irrelevant, because your intake process is supposed to prepare you to go into the real world as a representative of your organization, which is preparing you to do work, to be a respective member of the organization, of the council, and to represent yourself and your organizations to the best of your ability.
I guess I'm indifferent towards the, in my opinion, I'm indifferent because I wasn't here before. I don't know how being in public was effective, but I know now that it's underground, there's definitely more suspicion, like it's more mysterious. So I guess a lot of people, they have negative views towards it. I don't necessarily have a negative view towards it. I'm just indifferent. I don't have a preference of whether it should be public or underground.
And I chose an MPHC sorority because I felt like what they stood for hit home more so for me as a person than a Pan-Hellenic organization or a multicultural Greek Council organization, because we do have such a rich history in civil rights and international involvement throughout the world, as well as health movements in addition to all of that. So that just really hit home to me personally. We do have a lot of stigmas against us as a council. A lot of people think all that we do is stab, stroll, and throw parties, when in essence we're all about service and scholarship. Each organization has their own specific philanthropy that they are committed to and that they work towards throughout the year. Maybe it's because that's not as publicized as the funner aspects of being in a Black Greek-lettered organization, but that's definitely something that we hold closer to our own hearts within our chapter. Something a lot of MPHC organizations pride themselves on are knowing your brothers or your sisters very well, knowing the history of your organization and knowing the people who came before you. So essentially, if you do not know that, or if someone came up to you and asked you about your organization, you couldn't answer those questions, then you are then considered paper. You had a less strenuous process. You essentially signed your name on a sheet of paper, and that's how you got into your organization without putting in any effort. And while the intake process is extremely important, it does mold you as a person, and it does determine how you may act in the chapter should you cross into it and be accepted. But it's more important what you do after that. What do you do once you're in the chapter and you have a position? Are you going to your committee meetings? Are you sending in all of your work on time? Are you there when your chapter puts on a week full of events, and are you being supportive? So that's more so the bigger picture, and unfortunately people focus on such a small part of that, which is the intake process, instead of the lifetime commitment that you give to your organization.
There's really no discretion. You know everybody who's doing everything, so it really doesn't matter. You might as well just be out in the open with it and just let everybody know, hey, I'm so-and-so and I'm pledging this organization, because there's really no form of discretion in today's generation. Everybody wants to know everybody's business and let everybody know that I'm doing this, because they think it's cool, when really there's a lack of respect for what you're doing. So if you're gonna not have that respect, you might as well not have, the might as well not be a part of the underground thing. Just do it above ground so everybody knows out in the open, hey, you're doing this, so you don't screw up and let certain things slip. In the military, you know, you're expected to obey orders. When you don't obey orders, there are negative consequences. It's the same thing when you're being initiated. You don't obey orders, there are negative consequences. It's really hard to enact negative consequences outside of some kind of physical retribution. It sounds really bad the way I say it, but I mean, if your mom tells you not to put your hand in the cookie jar and you don't have the fear of receiving a spanking or some form of punishment, you're gonna put your hand in the cookie jar, take that cookie, eat in front of your mama's face, and look and smile at her and be like, I dare you to do something. So you got to bring up, you know, it's like bringing up a child. You know, saying spare the rod, spoil the child. That's in Ephesians in the Bible. And you know what I'm saying. So you gotta mold them, and that's frankly speaking, that's how I feel. That's what I feel people's problem is with that. But then that's what, you know, is somewhat necessary almost. The repercussions of an organization receiving a hazing allegation can be extremely detrimental. Amen. I feel like Black Greek life on an undergrad level is threatened by these hazing allegations. And in turn, on a holistic level, all these organizations are threatened because the lawsuits that are incurred through hazing instances, they fall onto the macro organization, large organization. People can't even really yell at somebody else without, you know, it's, oh, they're hazing me or yada yada yada. I'm going to actually use an example of why I think America's getting soft. A father was caught on video disciplining his daughters for shaking their butt for a Facebook video. Now people will say the beating was a bit extreme. Personally, I don't think so. In the way I was brought up and how I was brought up, it wasn't at all. And frankly speaking, you know, all he's trying to do is keep his daughters off the stripper pole, and shaking your ass on Facebook is literally a step in the door. So, with that said, I think for him to have been arrested and placed in jail, I feel like America is getting too soft. With the outcry that came after that, like America is getting too soft, and we're getting too soft to the point where we're trying to just we're actually doing our children and doing our, you know, the people of our nation a disservice with this softness. People need some rigidity, some roughness to harden them up. You know, when you lift weights, your hands become calloused because they're not used to, you know, enduring the weight and the roughness of the bar. But eventually, that will, you know, you won't even feel that. That will be something, you know, that's not even a thought. It's the same way with people. You must go through experiences, you must go through hardship, so that you are callous, so that you are able to endure and withstand, and in turn become a stronger individual. Without all of that, you tend to let anything knock you off your feet. And if anything can knock you off your feet, I'm guaranteed that there's going to be something that knocks you off your feet and you won't be able to get up off your ass. Yeah, that's about it.
Riggedy row, riggedy gadzooks, here I go, so riggedy flame on, Geronimo, yo, I biggity burn, riggedy rubber when I blabber, great, I biggity make the Wonder Twins, the actor, it's crazy, I'm biggity breaking back. The black, no. Started quickly, right, set it off, I suggest, don't set it off, I suggest, don't set it off, set it off, set it off, set it off. W-E-W-E-R